right. Thank you, everyone. I'll go ahead and get started. Hopefully you have a handout if you would like one. So today we're going to talk about the overview of a couple terms and the process of the revenue neutral rate. We're going to talk about current trends that we're seeing with our general fund. We're going to talk about the projected 2025 general fund balance. Outside agencies will present at the next council meeting. And then we'll talk about future directions for staff and going forward.
Yeah, and I did want to include that I appreciate everyone's flexibility. So we're a little behind on the budget calendar, but largely that was just due to me needing to get up to speed on where we're at in the budget. We're not really that far behind, but I did need a few weeks to really get settled and understand where we're at fiscally. So.
And it's been a tougher budget year as well, which we'll see. Okay, just as a reminder, I want to go over what a mill means and then the revenue neutral rate procedure. So a mill is just an expression of the tax levy in relation to the assessed valuation. It's basically the assessed valuation divided by 1,000. That's how you get 1 mill. For 2025, 1 mill for the city of Hutchinson equals $380,287 in revenue. So in 2025, our valuation went up 5.1%. In mills, that is 1.96 mills. So for a $100,000 homeowner, what you would do is take that 100,000 times 0.115, and you get 11,500, and that's the assessed valuation. That assessed valuation times 1.96 divided by 1,000 is 22.54 tax dollars for the year. So if we were to take advantage of that full 5.1% increase in valuation, the $100,000 homeowner would be paying 22.54 more dollars in 25 than versus in 24. Are there any questions about that? As a refresher on the revenue neutral rate rules, what revenue neutral rate means is that we cannot increase our tax revenue $1 more than the prior year without doing special procedures. So what that means is if the valuation increases, like ours increased 5.1%, the mill levy must be lowered to get the same revenue as the prior budget. So we would then decrease the mill 1.96 mills to keep the same revenue as the prior year. If we want to exceed this, then a notice must be published in the newspaper. The county must be notified that we're going to do this by July 20th. And we must tell them what date we're going to set our public hearing. We have to have a special revenue neutral rate public hearing in addition to our normal public hearing for our budget. So like Enrico said, we're a little bit behind on our process, but I think between today and the next council meeting, we can at least decide what the max mill levy we want to set is going to be and whether we're going to exceed revenue neutral so that we can tell the county by the 20th. I think that is doable.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
And when even in years that we've shot for revenue neutral rate, we always go and we say we're willing to go more than revenue neutral just in case something were happening. Because if we do go over revenue neutral and we don't make that decision, what are the consequences?
So the consequences are that if we earn $1 more than the prior year, we have to find a way to repay that back to the taxpayers. So that's very impractical, very tedious procedure. They have since then implemented some procedures where the county clerk does have authority to reduce it. So if our valuation changes between now and November when they do the final assessed valuation, the county clerk does have authority to reduce that. But they do suggest going ahead and doing the revenue neutral exceedance policies just in case the county clerk doesn't catch that. or something else were to happen. So we could still want to do that even if we wanted to remain revenue neutral.
This is only in regards to property taxes.
Right. Yes.
It may be helpful as well to give an explanation of this system, as many of us in the room know. But with the revenue neutral rate, for us, if we were to keep our mill flat, that it would give the appearance that as the assessed valuations go up, that we've raised taxes. That's unfortunately the byproduct of the revenue neutral rate process, even though theoretically we haven't. So that is a function of the county, not the city, in terms of the assessed valuation. That is the unfortunate predicament that we are in. So to put that more into layman's terms, that it's a good thing that your property value goes up. So eventually when you sell your home, you can make more money off of that property. But a function of that same thing, the consequence of that is that, say, the cost to maintain your street has now gone up. The salaries that we pay to have people fix the roads, the material that makes up the composition of the road, all of those things are incrementally more expensive. But by lowering the mill in order to match the revenue neutral rate, we now have less money to use to fix our streets, even though we do not control the assessed valuation process. And so I think for anyone listening, that it is, just to be clear, that even by keeping the mill flat from what it was last year, it's going to give the appearance that we've raised taxes. So
Feel free to interrupt whenever you have questions. So the next thing I want to talk about is the general fund condition. So we began 2024 with $10.2 million in the general fund. And normally, to skip ahead. Okay, so in the 2024 budget, if we were to collect revenue and spend expenditures like we are budgeted, we would end 24 with $6.1 million. Now, what we've seen over the past 3 years is that generally revenue has been between 1 and 2.5 million over what we have budgeted. I've been pretty conservative on estimates of sales tax because we keep hearing that sales tax could go down at some point. So we've collected more sales tax than budgeted, and also we have this historical trend of underspending our expenditures by $2 million. So if that were to remain true in 2024, we would be better off than budgeted, and we'll take a look at that more in depth. So why does 2024 and 2025 look different than these trends? And I've got a graph there, and it's in your packet as well, as your revenues in blue and expenditures in green. And 2022 had a little anomaly, which we'll talk about as well. So what we're seeing right now in 2024 is that our sales tax is down 2%. And so I've looked into this. Sales tax is generally down all over, especially in utilities, car sales, and a little bit everywhere except for food. Also, our compensating use tax is down. And what that is when people buy things online and pay sales tax, we collect compensating use tax. It's a separate category. And that we see is going down as well. It could be that people are traveling more now and not buying as much online. So, and also franchise fees are down 15%. That's largely electric and gas. It looks like consumption is down compared to prior years. So on this chart, you see how from the light blue to the darker blue and teal and green, every year our sales tax has been going up. Well, the yellow line is 2024 so far, and so we're not seeing that increase in sales tax anymore. It's starting to go down because of what I've mentioned. Also, as you know, we're experiencing inflation that is not typical. So just to compare that to what our spending looks like, I've created this chart. So there's the municipal cost index, which includes things like construction. And we know that construction is one of the items that has seen more inflation than others, versus the consumer price index. So that doesn't account for construction as much. So if you look at our general fund spending over these years, you'll see that our expenditures have not been exceeding that municipal cost index. So I think we've been pretty good about managing our money and controlling our budget with these inflation trends that we have seen. So in 2024, there's some more trends that are going on with our expenditures, partly due to being able to offer competitive raises. Vacancies are lower than normal. So the street department is close to fully staffed, and what happens when the street department's closer to fully staffed is that they spend more on asphalt and other materials and actually get work done, which is a good thing for our citizens. But when we're looking at our budget, it probably means we're not going to underspend as much as we normally would. So vacancies are lower than normal across the board. Also, like in dispatch, we've been almost fully staffed, where that hasn't happened in years. So that's what we're seeing. We've also increased our headcount by 3 full-time equivalents through 24. One was the municipal clerk position. That was hired because of pending retirements. We hired a strategic growth director to oversee public information officers, housing, and human relations. And then in engineering, we hired an additional construction engineering tech, and this was to help offset some of the payments we're making to JEO to help with our construction. So that's why those were hired. But that additionally increases expenditures more than typical. So in 2025, what we're projecting is 5% raises. We have one new FTE proposed, and that's the code compliance officer, because we know that council would like to increase code compliance enforcement. So that was added to the budget. We're also looking at health insurance increases of 10%. And then CAPERS and KPF are increasing 8.37 and 6.75%. So the chart, and this chart is in your handout as well, shows what that means for salaries. So you're looking at about 2.5 million of increases in salaries alone due to these trends. So what have we done in 2025's budget to help with all of this? Well, originally when we got the requests in, put the general fund budget together, we were negative 3.8 million. So we have looked at 3.8 million of adjustments and cuts to bring that general fund balance up. We are also proposing that we do not remain revenue neutral, which we can discuss council's feelings on that, but that is, we're not revenue neutral in the handouts and the slides that we have here. Also, in 2022, our general fund balance was above what we needed for reserves. And at that time, everybody kept saying sales tax may decrease at some time. So I obtained permission from the city manager to transfer $1 million from the general fund into the MRF as a savings cushion for the future to help in future budgets. And in 2025, we are proposing to use that $1 million in the MRF to offset what we transfer to the MRF. We had over 11 new FTE requests, and we're only proposing one to be funded in this budget. We are also proposing to freeze positions pending revenue. If sales tax revenue comes in higher than projected or franchise fees increase, we could always unfreeze these positions and allow these positions to be filled by departments. And so those positions are on the left there, the airport operations manager, the assistant city engineer, civil engineer, and then 2 police officers. So this is something that we're proposing but can be undone in the case that we actually have higher revenues. And then also something we want to consider is outside agency funding, which we'll hear from them on the 16th.
And I'll say on this slide, there's a lot to unpack here, but I'll start with the frozen positions first. That in order to dig ourselves out of that negative 3.8 million that we had in the fund balance as we took everything in, that was the last ditch effort, truthfully. And then it became the evaluation of what is the minimum staffing that we would need that we could theoretically reduce without impacting any level of service. So for instance, in the police department, they typically operate at anywhere between 5 to 7 vacancies year over year. And so by reducing 2, we shouldn't in practice be affecting any level of service that the police department would be able to offer. The same thing on our staffing for the engineering positions. That right now we do have help with engineering consultants to help us get projects out the door and to also help us evaluate any issues as they come up more day to day. So even on the engineering side, there shouldn't be any level of service hit from our project standpoint. Also with the general fund balance itself and how it lends itself to the reserves, that there could be bond implications on our bond rating as to how we're scored in the future, especially with as low as it is. And so a bond rating is a city equivalent of like a credit score. And so we can get lower interest rates if we have a higher fund balance or a higher savings is probably another way to think of that. So there's just quite a few things to unpack here. And the new position that we could fund is the codes enforcement position. So with the discussions of wanting to really address codes enforcement throughout the city, that's a lot of burden on our existing staff. So we would need to increase capacity there to be able to do that. So if there are any questions on this slide, but I wanted to unpack a little bit of what went into that.
So on this slide, I apologize, the top one's a little bit blurry, but that's where we started, was negative 3.8 million. And currently, the bottom, we're at 759,000 at the end of 2025. So if we typically underspend 2 million, realistically, maybe we could expect like 4.7 million at the end of 25, which is still below what our fund balance policy states we should have, which should be around 7 million with the way our expenditures are increasing.
And to get to that 759,000 would be to reduce the amount that we give our external partners. The ask was at least 5% across the board in reduction from what we would normally contribute to them. And then it was some of those other strategies as well as like freezing positions and stuff in order to really get us to a point where we're at 759,000, which, as Angela said, is about a tenth of what it should be.
So to get there, we would propose that we only decrease our mill 0.25. So in this graph, at the top, you can see our total city mill levy in 2020, so that's for the 21 budget, is 44.462. 21, we held about the same. 22, we decreased 2.94. 23, we decreased 1.23. And then to remain revenue neutral, so that's the second column from the right, we would have to decrease it by 1.96 mils. We're proposing the far right column to not remain revenue neutral and to only reduce it 0.25. Just to illustrate what this means for our revenue is, you see the highlighted that's underneath there, the revenue neutral rate revenue reduction. So in 22, by reducing our mill levy 2.94, we saved taxpayers $999,000. Well, that same mill levy reduction then in 23 would be $1 million. And so you just see how that is compounding. And then also you see the total assessed valuation at the bottom where it increased 5.1. There's where I point out the compounding total effect of reducing our mill levy. So you can see if we were to remain revenue neutral, it's over $4 million of tax savings, if you want to phrase it that way, over the last 3 years that we would have provided taxpayers versus keeping the mill levy the same. Are there any questions about that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, we've essentially lowered the mill levy by a little bit more than 10% since 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Lowering it even more is just getting to the point where now we're not going to be able to provide services like we need to. I mean, we knew 2 years ago we went revenue neutral, and last year we tried to split the difference, lower the mill levy, not revenue neutral. We don't have room to do that again.
Oh, for sure. I couldn't agree more.
And as Angela and I were working on this, one of the realities that both struck us almost at the same time, that we ran out of like basically one-time cuts to the point where for any future year, it would look like a reduction in staff to really move the needle. So that was an unfortunate reality of our discussions as we just, admittedly, my focus shifted, okay, after this budget, what does that look like for next year? And so trying to forecast for next year, that's where the thought came of, do we reduce staff? Anyway, that definitely tells a lot here too, and I just wanted to share that.
We wanted to just highlight some of our neighboring communities and what their mill levy is, so you can kind of see here what the mill levy is for some of the neighboring communities. Also, again, we'll talk about this next council meeting, but here's what we have been providing to outside agencies between 21 and then what is proposed or what they've requested in the 2025 budget. So you can see how the Chamber of Commerce has increased. We've increased Startup Hutch, the neighborhood programs for the Hutch Rec. Also, as kind of a note in there, we wanted to point out how much we're subsidizing the Salt City Splash and Fun Valley. Those are in the Fun Valley budget and the swimming pool budget. And then also Noel Day Center has requested $50,000 in 2025 for their day center, but I did not include that in the budget. So.
No, this is what you were talking about, cutting 5% or not before.
Yeah, correct.
So this is actually what they requested. You haven't shown the 5% cut here yet, have you? No.
No.
Okay.
Do we have that?
We do, but I mean that is something I wouldn't want to make a final decision on until
they present.
Yeah. I just wanted to touch on the business funds a little bit. We will they will be included in the proposed budget going forward. But the water and sewer rate increases have been established through 2027. Those have been approved by City Council. So an average of 5 to 5.5% increase for those rates. The refuse, the trash rates will increase 2% per our contract with Citizens Refuse. And right now, I don't have everything finalized, but the fund balances are looking healthy because we've prioritized projects. I should say Brian has done most of that. He's prioritized projects and looked at what we can realistically do with the revenue we have. So those will be in your proposed budget, and we can talk about those going forward.
And then again, just for anyone listening or may not know, so the business fund, I've heard it of many names, proprietary fund or enterprise fund. That's monies that cannot be used for things other than the utilities. So if it's sewer money, it goes back to the sewer. If it's water, it gets invested back into the water. So it can pay for the staff that take care of that. But it can't be used for, say, street maintenance. And so I did want to throw that out there because it's been asked, well, you guys are raising water rates, can't use that to fix streets? And the simple answer is no. That's why I say that.
So from here, I would like to discuss what council's thoughts are on exceeding revenue neutral and what the maximum mill levy we would propose so that we can let the county know. And then talk about any actions that you have for staff regarding the budget. I also want to note that we're still trying to ballpark what the atrium demo would cost. And so that may mean going back to our CIP fund and looking at how that plays into it and whether we have to postpone projects or not. So that's something we're currently working on. But I'd love to hear council's thoughts at this point.
Can we go back to the slide that shows the 3 to 4 year trend on mill levies? So, going back to, for Scott and Stacy, when we stepped into the 2022 budget season to talk about 2023, the idea was we had funds. We were heavy into the COVID era. We didn't know where sales tax was going, and everyone was fighting really heavy inflation. So we didn't want the city to be adding to that burden that year. So we went revenue neutral, which caused a lot of pain because our costs, especially consumables and whatnot, basically went up with inflation. So a lot of the department heads, to give credit, kind of operated independently with a interim city manager situation to try to find ways to make it work. And it worked out really well, I thought. And so we remained revenue neutral. The next year, we still had the same concerns, and it was, all right, with the way it's looking, the mill levy, we could probably reduce it and still raise our budget. I think it was something like 2.5%, 3%. But if we stayed with the mill levy, it would have been like a 6% increase in our budget. So we split it in half, which is still beating inflation costs. Now we're at a point where if we look at 3 or 4 year trend, we're beating inflation costs with our budget increases, but we've gotten to a point where we're starting to skin our own knees with budget. And that's where I think we're going here. I actually think we need to have a discussion. Do we just keep the mill levy as it is for a year? Especially if you look at our general fund balance compared to our expenditures. I think we're getting a little tight. And to be fair, Councilmember Conklin brought this up last year. We talked about that too. Is we're getting to the point where we can't operate this way, and we've made a lot of cuts over the last few years to make up for that inflation.
So that would be not revenue neutral.
I don't see a way we can do it revenue neutral either way. But I'm also and I appreciate this. Staff is proposing a reduction in mill levy by 0.25. I'm saying we need to consider just keeping it even.
Flat.
And we look at the 3 or 4 year trend. I mean, look at what if we go to the sheet that shows how much it costs to operate, health insurance, all these costs. And I remember going back and looking at 2019, and it was something like a 50% increase from 2019 to 2022 on how much it costs just to operate, especially health insurance and all these other aspects that are outside of our control in a lot of ways.
And on if I may,
The bottom line is we are forced to spend less because of inflation. We're not keeping up. with inflation. So therefore, we are shrinking our government and we're down to people.
If you adjust for inflation, we have been cutting costs drastically over
Every
the last
year.
2 or 3 years.
And, you know, that 0.25 reduction was something I suggested to.
In some things.
It's, well, it's $100,000. So, I mean, it's whatever the council wants to do. I just, you know, people want nice things.
Well, there's wants and needs.
Yeah.
And it's on us. Some people say some things we consider wants, we consider needs.
I think that makes sense because I don't want to sacrifice the near future projects and maintenance and things that we have to do by slashing things too hard right now.
And continuing that compound, that's the killer,
Mm-hmm.
is that compounding effect of those cuts.
That's where I kind of say we just keep the mill levy where it's at.
Yeah.
Don't decrease it at this point. And the story is, look what's happened over the last 5 years with costs and budget, and compare the two, consumer price index or whatever index you want to use. And I would be very transparent in regards to, you know, I know we can find data that supports our story, but we need to show data that is accurate. And not cherry pick the stuff that tells the story we want, but really realistically, people see it on the news, people see it everywhere. It costs more to operate, whether it's a business or your home. And we're not sheltered from that too much.
And if I can offer that, one of the things that excites me about the direction the city wants to go is the appetite to reinvest in itself. And so think of the downtown master plan and the zoo strategic plan that we just learned about today, that it takes money to do that. And so as we want to invest in these other things for the betterment of the community, we need additional funding to do that. And so this is a way to help us get there. So I just wanted to offer that opinion as well, that I'm definitely looking forward to the future of what we can do. We just need help to get there, and that help is financial.
And I
Well,
think
let's take a break. Take a break and grab a sandwich and a bag of chips, please.
This is live on YouTube, by the way. So that's a complicated thing to do.
No, I don't mean break off of there. Just come back and get your sandwich.
Okay. And don't eat anywhere near a microphone, which is all over the place.
Ignore IT, get your
Yeah. They do that automatically anyway.
sandwich. I know.
No, you can keep the title.
We're gonna go to Duke's. Law versus Ranking.
You mean you'll shut down my computer?
in the discussion,
You showed one that had the outside agencies, Startup Hutch, the chamber. Is that in the pamphlet? Do you know what page it's on?
So let me grab
It's in there, Stacy.
No, I just wanted to. Wanted to look at it again.
it's on the very last page.
they're buying a used car. They're buying clothes and shoes for their kids. They're spending it, and we are seeing that benefit also on tax revenue. So I think we have a lot of really good programs. There are some that I always question. I love the chamber, but I always look at that line item and I question it. Startup Hutch, I've learned so much about in the past year that, really just the incubator that they provide, I think is really important. I don't know. I think it's really hard to slash things at this point because they are providing value to the community. Question, I know that we get certain tax payments back on a delay. The quarter sales tax from the funds here in Stratica, that is ending in October of this year, right?
It's been renewed for another
You're thinking
5
of the
years.
bond for the sports arena.
Sports arena.
Sorry, okay, thank you. Yes, I was like, why is it on here for 2025? That, I'm thinking of the bond for the sports arena. Okay. Never mind.
When does that change on our sales tax?
October 1st.
October 1st. So wait to buy the big things until October 1st. Because that was 2 point, how much was that one? 2.3, 3.5? So it's gonna lower us to 8.25% sales tax.
I thought it was
That
point
was
three.
that was
Point
yeah.
five.
0.35.
Yeah.
So 0.75, 0.075?
Well, we're at 8.6%
Yeah,
total.
so minus 0.35, so.
So 8.25% sales tax total.
Angela, speak to what you're reading about sales tax trends. We're in an election season. What is the trend? I mean,
So
I think he might have touched on it. People might be traveling now and not buying things.
you look at Newton and Salina's projected budgets, they're continuing to project sales tax increases. So I don't think that they're seeing the decrease that we are. I know that I've seen in the news that car sales are down right now. And that is one area we're seeing it. Utilities. There's only so much I can dig into it. I don't know. Someone brought up Sunoco, whether if they were a big user, if that's part of why utilities are down too. But
They were a big user.
Angela,
but I can't dig into it that far.
there was the distribution of the
Yeah,
natural gas.
So, I also had forgotten that in 22, the state had made a change that came into effect July of 23 that the distribution part of your utility bill for gas and electric is not subject to sales tax anymore. So that could be on top of seeing usage go down, because that's why franchise fees are going down. Right? That could be part of it as well.
We're not affected by the grocery sales tax. So
No, we are not.
just wanna make sure.
We still have local sales tax on all groceries. And that's why I'm hesitant to, slash positions instead of just freezing, because I don't know for sure that sales tax won't start increasing again. But
If you looked at the trends, it dropped this time of year anyway. The trends.
yeah, but almost every month we've been below last year.
We also have to be careful. It closed down. That space is not being used. Things like that. You have any thoughts, Scott? Or Steve?
No, I'm agree with you. We can't do neutral again this year. hate to tell you this, but one time we're gonna get so far, we might have to raise taxes. I don't wanna be here when we do that, but, I mean,
Well, and we're a piece of the overall puzzle with the taxpayers.
Well, but if you look at the slide that showed our counterparts, you go back to that slide a minute.
Some of our yeah.
I mean, look at the difference.
And also, if you look at first-class cities, we're right in the middle.
So we're not the highest taxed community in Kansas.
Oh.
That's what I heard.
That's what they say on the Facebooks.
Well, and if you look at the data even further, when you look at all of the taxing jurisdictions that we have in the city, from the county, the community college, us, the cumulative effect, we're then in the upper third, but we're still not at the highest rate. So
There's a couple cities with more than 11% sales tax in the state. So I was surprised by that. I think Leavenworth was 11% sales tax. Okay.
Any direction you have from staff going forward?
Excuse me?
Do you have any direction for staff going forward?
Well, staff has done what I've had asked. I mean, you and I have been communicating almost daily. I don't know, Stacy, do you want to pick and choose, like, on the outside agencies? It just seems like if we're asking staff to cut and to continue to cut, our outside agencies should do that as well. Maybe not. It makes sense in my head.
Well, I think out of fairness, you should hear the proposals and then.
For sure.
Mhm.
I mean, rather than just say.
They need to propose, and then here's what you're getting for your money. Every dollar spent is a good investment with us, and here's why.
That's a great thing.
I agree, and I guarantee they're listening and watching right now, because when do they come before us? In 2 weeks?
Yeah, the next council meeting is when we've asked
Or,
them
yeah.
to present.
Because there's not a breakdown of their expenditures of.
No, and I anticipate that they'll come with some of that material, especially the chamber. Startup Hutch, they're usually pretty transparent about that. I know Hutch Rec, that neighborhood request is just for their position, so we'll hear something about that.
Do we have breakdowns of previous, like last year, of their expenditures in this report? I've got the actual detailed summary, but I didn't know if it broke it down any farther than that. So,
beyond like what's in
Yes.
this chart, no, I don't
Okay.
have it.
My recollection, they've all added positions this year, even Startup Hutch, but I know for them in particular, they had, theirs coincided with a different funding mechanism, so, yeah, I am curious to hear what they say. I hope that, they bring us a lot of information to consider.
Well, on some of them, to be fair, we asked them to do certain things for us. I mean,
We outsource some of our things to
yeah, and so,
the next city council meeting. We'll have to have something on the agenda for exceeding revenue neutral, because it's gotta be done by July 20th. Okay.
Angela, can you go back to the slide that showed the negative 3.8 million fund balance and then the 759?
Mm-hmm.
So to get to that 759, that's technically not where we're at present day. That's factoring in those assumed budget cuts. So if we decide to not do those, then that fund balance goes back down. I don't remember what that number was, but at one point we had 75,000 in fund balance. So it's just
85 or something.
Yeah, and so that's how we got to that, was by factoring in some assumed cuts to them. So I just wanted to circle back to that.
I mean, if we do keep the mill levy flat, that would help to offset some of those cuts that had been assumed to outside agencies. So you can keep that in mind too.
Absolutely. I didn't think of that. If that is the direction we go, to keep it flat, and that's less we have to worry about on that piece.
Think of the reserve.
Can you say that again?
Build up the reserve.
Okay.
Personally, I think we should just leave it flat. That's my personal thought. And I would communicate with anyone that I talked to over the last 3 or 4 years. You'll see that we have been fighting inflation and beating it back, and now it's to the point where we need to get back to normal business.
I can go along with that. I mean, again, it's $100,000. It's something.
So just for a timeline, on the 16th, we would do the resolution that authorizes us to tell the county that we're going to exceed revenue neutral rate, and what that would be, and it'll set the public hearing. We'll hear from outside agencies, and I should have a total proposed budget with all the funds in it for you at that point as well. And then our revenue neutral budget hearing would be sometime in September, and I'll have that date for you on the 16th.
Any other thoughts or concerns the council needs to?
Does that mean we don't get a raise as city council members?
There it is. I told Mary Grace, I wonder when it's going to come up.
I will say one part of the budget for the council that we did raise was we did increase the travel budget for you all. That way, as council members, that you can attend conferences where it may require distant traveling for you all. Because I do think that it is important that as a council, you see new ideas and best practices and other cool things that other municipalities are able to do, and then be able to bring that back. So there is a lot of value in you guys being able to travel. And so we did increase that.
I know Greg's done a lot more outside of Hutchinson visits with other entities than I did last year.
Well, I'm paying for it. I mean, I just do it because I want to be connected to those folks. And I don't think that's fair, but that's my choice. But I know there's other council members that want to do things and you can't. So I think that's good. I think it's so important that we are known and in Topeka, and there's so many other things that we could stick our nose in and be a good, good partner, and those relationships mean something.
Absolutely. I mean, it is incredibly important that we don't get left behind, especially on other discussions that happen in Topeka, that is how your legislation is going to impact us. Because there are some state laws that only affect first-class cities, and so I think it's important that we air out our concerns. And so
there's also, if there's relationships built, as opportunities come up for grant programs and whatnot, we have a better chance of being made aware of those and taking advantage of those grant programs if we have a relationship going on outside of our city limits.
Yep.
I think you make it clear to the listeners that are listening, city council members do not get paid, so.
And we are asking for a 25% increase.
Yeah.
Well, 5% of zero is still zero.
Even just going to Manhattan yesterday and seeing, so I haven't been to Manhattan in like 20 years, so I don't get out much. The downtown area, what do you call it?
Aggieville?
Thank you.
Or Points?
Huh?
Points or Aggieville?
Probably Aggieville.
Okay. I'm familiar with that.
So the infrastructure, the signs, the lighting, the limestone bricks that they have that line the streets, which are seating, but also traffic control. There's a lot of really cool things that other cities do that I had no idea about. And that trip wasn't on the city taxpayers, but it's just really cool, and I appreciate that. I think that it is important for us to connect with Topeka if we were not represented at the Day on the Hill this spring. Reno County sent, I think they sent everybody.
Mhm.
And we weren't there. So at the end of the day, we missed out on building our relationships. And as we have state, we have the prison, we have the Cosmosphere, we have Straticut, we have all of these really cool tourist attractions. We need to be connecting with the Department of Commerce. We need to be connecting with the Department of Corrections, and they need to know who Hutchinson is. So I appreciate that.
All right. Anything else? Any other thoughts? I mean, are we comfortable with this? I mean, staff has done a wonderful job once again. I appreciate the communication. I appreciate you saying, well, what do you think? What do you think? And I just tell you from what I guess these others might go for or not go for and how we got there, and that's all you. So if we want to remain flat on the mill levy rate,
Well, and
that's fine.
you had the math up earlier. If we remain flat on the mill levy, it was $22.50 for every $100,000 house.
Yep.
If your property is valued at $100,000, it's $22.54 in tax for the city. We remain right at the mill levy we're at. Okay.
I would be curious to know if you could shed some light on you said there were 11 full-time employees requested, but we're doing 3. Those that aren't being included this year aren't going to be, I know 2 sounds like came from employees. We're not putting any departments in a bind.
One was the airport.
Well, of those requested, it's on page 16.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It was 10, but actually 3 of them were hired in 24. So, a net change from 24 budget to 25 budget is 4 positions, 3 that were hired. So like one was the human resource coordinator. Part of that is to cross train for the payroll specialist who will be retiring. So we did budget in there some cross training before year end. Then the municipal court clerk's already been hired, strategic growth director. Planning requested a senior planner. Dispatch requested 2. And the custodial janitor requested 1 as well, and those were denied.
And it should be noted that for dispatch, they're fully staffed plus 1. So that would have just been 2 additional staff. And so it's, I believe, the first time in a long time that they have been fully staffed. So.
And the +1 is to help offset overtime, vacations, all that.
When I talked to them maybe 2 months ago, they sounded like they were functioning really well right now with their staffing levels.
If there's no further questions, are we done?
I think so.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.